And England's cricketers take on South Africa in the second one-day international of the series at Trent Bridge today. That starts at 2:30.
BBC Radio Manchester, satellite weather with Diane Oxbury.
Well, the temperatures are good today. They stay good all the way through, and they'll be warm throughout the night as well. But I'm afraid there's an awful lot of cloud cover, and as the day goes on, we've got a band of rain that's going to work its way down across the region. Some of the rain will end up being heavy through the afternoon, so the day definitely takes a turn for the worse. Top temperature 20 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones.
0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Hiya. You all right? Good. So am I. Telephone number if you want to join us, 0161 228 2255. The email address, radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk. And you can text on 07786 206 951, and you can talk about absolutely anything. You pick the subjects, we rattle through them, see where it gets us. That's it. It's not much of a plan, but it's the only one I've got, so you'll have to make do. Yeah. This is it. I don't know what this story means. I mean, well, you tell me. I'll read it out, just as it appears. Wind turbines kill more bats than birds. All right? Now, there it is. Wind turbines kill more bats than birds. What does that mean? What does that mean? I have no idea what that... It can mean, well, in my mind, one of two things. It can mean that wind turbines kill more bats than they do birds. Okay? That's fair. That's what... Yep, absolutely. So as they're whizzing round... Well, they don't whiz, they kind of go slowly, don't they? They go... And as they're going round, and they wallop the bat, a bit like a bat, a cricket bat, whack! And the bat falls down dead. Loads of them. Every now and then it hits a bird. Whack! And the bird falls down dead. And there's more dead bats than birds. So that is, wind turbine kills more bats than birds. Fine. Except it's not. Because it can also mean the wind turbines kill more bats than birds do. You see? So same scenario, bat flying along, and then it's a race as to whether the turbine gets it, wallop, falls down dead, or whether the bird gets it, wallop, and is eaten for tea. Now, it's likely to be, I do accept, it's likely to be the wind turbine kills more bats than the turbines kill birds. Because, as you know, not many birds live on bats. Most birds are asleep when the bats are awake, except your owl. And your owl doesn't really catch things that are flying round. It catches things on the floor. But you've got dusk, when the birds are about and the bats are about at the same time. There could be snacking. There could be snacking involved. And this is important. Stop laughing. This is important. And you've got dawn. Yeah, I know a few lads who have had dawn, but you've got dawn. And they're about, you see, simultaneously. So there is room for each interpretation. Notice I didn't say both. So that's that. And also, in the paper, on the same page, actually, it's the Independent, and on the same page, Church of England leaders are being encouraged to cut down on the use of floodlights to illuminate buildings as part of an effort to promote greater environmental awareness. And I was stunned when I read that, because you do see the churches all lit up, don't you? But I thought that was God. I thought God was sending a little ray of daylight down to the churches. I didn't realise they were paying the electric and it was all light bulbs and all that. I'm really disappointed. And of all the churches, the one that is the most illuminated, again I thought it was God, but turns out it's floodlights, is that one in Chorley for the Church of the Latter-day Saints. You know the Mormons who send a couple of Yanks to kick your door in? Yeah, them. That's dead bright, that church. Well, it's near Chorley, isn't it? It's very, very bright. And I have to say, it's, well, unkind to their neighbours. I would even posit unchristian. But then what do you expect from God bothers?
This is the Northwest's biggest sports station.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Manchester United.
Manchester United are champions of Europe for the third time. Boy, do they deserve it.
Just 3 months after the drama in Moscow, Manchester United are out to lay their hands on yet more European silverware.
We'll view the Super Cup as one you win it, but still giving you what experience to play in a game of that nature.
United are in Monaco for the UEFA Super Cup against Zenit St Petersburg, and so are we.
The all-new Manchester Sports. Friday evening from 7.
BBC Radio Manchester.
He doesn't get a minute's peace, does he, Alex Ferguson? Dear God. There he is, quietly enjoying a bath. And in comes someone and interviews him. It's an outrage.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. How the hell are you? 0161 228 2255, Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And you can text on 0161 228 2255. And we start with Stephen in Whitefield, who says, am I the only person who was disappointed when that red bus drove into the Beijing Stadium on Sunday? How I would have loved for them to have played the theme to Steptoe and Son as the mock route master entered the arena on Sunday. An opportunity missed, in my opinion, says Stephen. I think I should do the opening ceremony in 4 years' time. Not that shower. That would have been good, wouldn't it? That would have shown we got a sense of humour, if nothing else. Dum, 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 dum. Mind you, knowing Boris Johnson, it'd be more like, wouldn't it? Yeah. It would have been more like the signature tune "Till Death Us Do Part," really, wouldn't it? And then he could have said, "Look, all you pickaninnies, we want you to come to London and run round in circles." Yeah, we do. He could so easily have said that. What a shame. Another opportunity missed. Morris in Bolton. Hello, Morris.
Hi there, Alan.
What have you got?
Right, well, we ordered a suite from a well-known furniture manufacturer in November last year. Well, we ordered it before then, but it was delivered in November. And when it came, there was faults in it, all in the front, and it was ragged on the top. There's flaws in the cushions. So the van driver said, we'll get somebody to have a look at it. And this went on for a week, nothing happened. Phoned up, nothing happened. And I've had about 40 phone calls, and on the phone at least half an hour each time, promises, and to this day, nothing's happened.
Right, well, you've left it too long, but never mind. You're a very patient man. I wouldn't have waited that long.
Well, I had two people out. One came out in the first place, had a look.
I still wouldn't have waited that long. I wouldn't wait that long if they sent everybody out. If they sent 12,000 people to stand in my garden, I still would have said, I'm not having it, it's a heap of crap, take it back. Which is what you should have done when you opened it. When you unwrapped it and it was damaged, you should have said, take it back, it's going on the garden. If you want to come and collect it, that's fine by me. Where are we up to now? What do you want?
Right, well, what happened, some guy came out and he took...
Where are we up to now? What do you want?
I just want to know what we can do about it.
Well, what is the last thing the company said? The last?
The last time was the 20th of August. She says she found out what was going on and they get back to us. But they said...
OK, that's fine. That was the last thing.
Yeah.
How much did you pay for it?
1,500.
1,600?
Yeah.
And how did you pay for it?
Paid by debit card.
Debit card?
Yeah.
Not credit card?
Debit, no.
Well, you missed a trick there. What you need to do is you need to stop phoning them up, stop doing all that rubbish. You need to write to them and you need to say you've got 28 days to get this suite out of my house and to refund my money. Otherwise, I'll take you to the small claims court. Full stop. Don't do anything else.
Right.
Nothing else. Don't faff about. That's what you do. You say, I've listened to your promises. They've been worth nothing. What I want is the suite gone and my money back. And you've got 28 days, otherwise I start proceedings in the county court. If they don't return your money and take the suite away in that time, you start proceedings in the county court. If you do anything other than that, you're an idiot.
Well, also, on the 5th of June, they said they was replacing...
Why are you telling me this?
I'm just telling you now, because on the 5th of June, they said they would replace it.
Why are you telling me this? Do you think it's going to change what I've said?
No.
No. If you do anything other than what I just said, you're an idiot.
Right, OK, thanks.
So you write to them, you keep a copy of your letter, and you write to them at their registered office, and you tell them that you want the suite out. You don't write 25 pages of why. You say, it was delivered damaged, you have taken no positive action since, I want the suite removed from my premises, and my money refunded to me within 28 days or I start proceedings in the county court. If those two things do not happen, certainly the money bit of it, you start proceedings. If you do anything else, you're an idiot.
Right.
OK?
OK, right.
That simple. Have a good day. 0161 228 2255. Patience is a virtue unless you're being shafted by a shady furniture salesman. Why do people... I really don't understand it. Because you're lied to. If a bloke you're dealing with says, look, this is what we're going to do, and then he doesn't do that, all you've learned is that he's a liar. So what you've got to do from them on is realise if his lips are moving, it's because he's in the process of lying. And just don't believe him and say, I'm not interested in your promises anymore. What I want is action. Action. Nothing else. Action. Nothing else. Get on with it, or we go to court and see if the judge thinks you're a stinking liar as well. That's it. Everything else is a waste of space. 0161 228 2255. You got something to say? Good. Gerrit said, just pick up your phone and have a go. Horrible story at the weekend. Absolutely horrible. All the newspapers have been dealing with it, and I'm talking of, well, not of course, because there are lots of horrible stories, I suppose, but the one that caught my attention, primarily because I've got one myself, is the air rifle story. Did you see it? Absolutely horrible. Bloke in the garden. Now, I don't know why he was in the garden with two small children, one a babe in arms and the other a 5-year-old, and he's in the garden with them, and with him is an air rifle, loaded. So, that's... you wonder, but we've all been there, I guess. So then the air rifle, well, the phone rings, so the bloke scoots off to answer the phone. Well, you would. He leaves the loaded air rifle there. The kid, the 5-year-old, picks up the weapon and pulls the trigger. Because, well, you're 5 years old, you've no idea. You've seen your daddy do it, so you do it. Look, Daddy, this is what Daddy does. Ding! You pull the trigger. Unfortunately, the pellet hits the 18-month-old sister. The kid's rushed to hospital, critical but stable. His parents are at his bedside. We don't know where the gun is, nor do we know where the 5-year-old. The kid's grandfather explained how the accident happened, and you might think, well, it's just a terrible accident. No, it's not. It's not a terrible accident. A terrible accident is something that happens when people have not been negligent. What happened here is negligent. That's what happened here. It says he was cleaning the weapon. He was cleaning the weapon. He was cleaning a loaded weapon. Now, either somebody's lying or the man's a complete and utter idiot. I'm sorry. It's cruel. It's wicked. The thing I just said. But if he adhered to my policy of A, you don't clean a loaded weapon, B, no matter how loud the phone rings, you don't leave your kids in a place where they can play with a loaded gun. And if you do either of those, you are negligent. Now, the kid doesn't deserve to be shot by his sister. The kid doesn't deserve to shoot her brother. And neither of the kids deserve a half-wit parent. Don't tell me it could happen anywhere. The only place it could happen is where there is a parent stupid enough to be cleaning a loaded weapon in the presence of his children. This is not a tragic accident. This is a negligent parent who ultimately is at the end of it all. Ultimately, the cause of this accident is the negligent parent. His mother's in shock. I didn't like this is the grandfather, I didn't like my son keeping the gun anywhere near the children. I'll make sure he never has guns again. Well, that's good, isn't it? I wasn't very happy at this going on next door, but it made a loud noise, and I don't like having guns so close, said a neighbour. I'll bet you don't. Particularly if they're in the hands of an idiot. Listen, should air rifles be more regulated than they are presently? They changed the law recently so that only 18-year-olds could buy them. But frankly, just about any 18-year-old can buy them. There's nothing to stop anybody going into a shop and purchasing one. You, me. OK, if you're 17 and a half, no, you can't. But there's nothing to check whether you're stupid. Nothing whatsoever. 12:20 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Mark Edwardson.
Police from Greater Manchester and Lancashire have arrested a fourth man on suspicion of terror offences after threats to kill Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. The internet auction site eBay says it's investigating how a computer containing personal details of bank customers came to be sold on its website. And a robber has stolen cash from a shop in Flixton after threatening staff with a knife and a gun. Manchester's weather, cloudy and dull. Heavy rain expected this afternoon. Highs of 20 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Traffic on the M6 southbound still queuing up because of an earlier overturned caravan between 21A Croft and 21 Wolston. Now, the congestion still as far-reaching as 23 Haydock, again, despite the fact that the caravan has now been towed away. So do make sure that you allow yourself plenty of extra journey time if you're planning on using that route anytime soon. Don't forget as well that revised services are still in operation on Virgin trains between London Euston, Manchester Piccadilly and Liverpool Lime Street due to these engineering works that are taking place. Virgin train services on all the routes to and from London Euston will be altered, with replacement buses operating for most parts of the journeys. Now, passengers should contact National Rail inquiries on 08457 48 49 50 in the meantime. Don't forget, if you're stuck in a queue, maybe we've not mentioned it, call in on 0161 244 4951. I'm Carl Banks.
You're never more than 20 minutes away from the latest traffic through the day.
BBC Radio Manchester.
I was in London at the weekend. I had to go down on Saturday after I'd worked here. And I looked at going by train, but as you just heard in the Traffic and Travel, the trains are crap. I had to come back on Sunday. I looked at the train times. I was offered a 6.5-hour journey from London to Manchester, and I thought, bugger that for a game of soldiers. So then I looked at flying. I hasten to add that somebody else was paying. So I looked at flying from Manchester to London on Saturday morning and coming back Sunday. And by the time you added in all the time lurking about the airport so they can put that probe up your bottom and everything else they do before they let you on a plane these days, and taking your makeup off you, it doesn't bother me much. But you do all that, and then you've got to get to Heathrow, and then you've got to go on the underground and sit there with a load of smelly Londoners and others so that you can get into the city centre. And it was going to take me longer than if I drove. So I went by car. It cost me half as much as the train fare, a third as much as the railway fare, and was quicker. Why in the name of God would anybody go by train? They're crap. Why would you fly? They're crap. Go in your car, you use your bloody car. Stuff the environment, because the government's done everything it can to drive you into your car. Why? So they can then bleed you dry financially with things like the congestion charge. Yes, it's that moment again. That moment when BBC Radio Manchester's congestion conversations continue. Bit of alliteration there just to make it sound interesting. Almost 3 billion quid worth of investment in public transport, presumably so that the trains will go from A to B without you having to get off somewhere along the line, get on a bloody bus, get dragged round bits of the country you don't really want to see, and get back on a train to take you somewhere else. So far, BBC Radio Manchester reporters have been across the whole region, from Wigan in the west to Stockport in the south. Today, we're kind of in the heart. We're in Bury. Well, you're not allowed to go to Bury from Radio Manchester unless, at the very least, you take Jonathan Alley with you. Jonathan?
Good afternoon, Alan. And
Whereabouts have you been?
Well, you need your passport stamping if you're coming into Bury.
You do indeed need your passport stamping.
Well,
Just as well I haven't got one. Go on.
Well, this morning I've been up at the Bury Interchange and I've now moved down to the Prestwich Library at the Longfield Suite, just opposite the Metrolink station in Prestwich. Now, of course, Prestwich would be just inside the proposed charging zone on the congestion charge. Once you cross the M60, you're into Prestwich, you'd be charged initially for entering this area. And, of course, that's one of the hot topics here because, of course, if you have to nip across into Whitefield to drop your kid off to school and then come back to your own home, you're likely to be charged during the charging period, which we must stress is only during the morning.
Indeed. Well, isn't it tea time as well, going outwards?
It is tea time as well, going outwards from the city centre and then crossing the outer ring as well.
Right.
So Prestwich is one of those interesting areas that, you know, if you just cross over into Whitefield, you don't get charged. But, of course, this is all to do with the congestion charge, which is linked to nearly £3 billion worth of transport improvements. So let's find out how Bury would benefit.
Manchester's congestion charge station is BBC Radio Manchester.
So if you live in Bury, here's how it's looking. Cash from the congestion charge will mean more buses and extra services, plus buses that will run earlier and later into the day. You'll also be able to choose from at least 8 services an hour on the main routes. There'll be no new tram stops in Bury itself, but there will be more destinations that you can reach from Bury because of the network expansions. Double trams will also run on all services at peak times. You'll see more CCTV, interactive transport signs and yellow school buses. But the plans have not won over Bury Council, which has voted against the congestion charge.
Charge or no charge? Tell us what you think. Manchester's congestion charge station is BBC Radio Manchester.
So that's how Bury would benefit from the proposed congestion charge and public transport improvements.
Yeah, because every time we play one of them, every Tuesday night, we talk about the yellow buses. And I've not yet worked out how painting a few buses yellow will change anything.
I think they're designed to take children from being taken to school by their parents in their car, being put on safe school buses and taken to the school, which means less car journeys in the morning. And, of course, we all know from next week it'll be hell on earth on the roads as everyone goes back to school, and of course people take their kids in cars rather than walking them to school. The old argument, and that's why we're talking about yellow buses.
Right.
Now I've actually I've been here for just over an hour in Prestwich, and I've been talking to people about what they think about the proposed congestion charge, and they've got interesting answers.
I think that we definitely need to put more money into public transport, that's for sure, but I think that charging people to drive to work is a silly idea.
So which way will you be voting in the referendum?
I will be voting for no.
Public transport should be expanded. It should be cheaper. Be a good one. Cleaner, yeah, definitely cleaner. And regularly manned, and it to be a bit safer.
So which way will you vote in the referendum?
Against
Why?
the congestion charge. Because I only use Manchester now and again, but petrol's through the roof. You're not being paid correctly. Road tax going up, whether you've got a big or a small car, you're still paying through the nose.
If the public transport was to improve, I think it would be a good idea.
So which way will you vote in the referendum?
I have not decided yet. It won't affect me in a big way because I go the other direction.
But what would convince you to make a firm decision?
I think if it was firm promises on the public transport.
Which they say they are.
But they said that in London, didn't they? And I don't think people have experienced that in London.
All right, well, they haven't experienced that in London. What have they experienced here? Again, some people 50-50, nobody's saying what a cracking idea, I'll be giving it my vote.
Which is very different from the response I had in Bury, because in Bury, the people I spoke to, it was 50-50. Yes, 50%, no 50% of those people I spoke to. Whereas in Prestwich, of course, which means we're inside the charging ring, the majority of those people are either against, unsure, or tending towards being anti the planned congestion charge plus the transport improvements. So it is quite an interesting area to be in.
The thing that seems to speak to the person's answer is whether they'll have to pay it or not. If they have to pay it, they're against it.
Indeed.
No surprise there, I guess.
But we did hear there from some retired people who would vote yes for the congestion charge if they didn't have children who were affected.
Yeah,
and that's the crucial thing, because of course different families are talking about it, and it affects people in many different ways. And I think that is one of the things that comes out in the congestion conversation, by talking to people, how unsure they are about some of the proposals, some of the plans, some of the ideas. And one thing that seems to run like a vein through most of it is that most people just don't trust politicians. They just don't trust politicians to deliver this on time, on budget, and as they have promised.
Well, nobody knows them better than Paxman, and he's quoted in the papers today as saying that politicians are all liars. So if they agree with Paxman, perhaps they can't be far wrong. Good to talk to you. Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan in Prestwich at the moment. He'll be there until 2ish. You'll be able to express your views to him and register your view on the whole thing. Of course, that won't affect the outcome of the referendum. The referendum will be a standalone vote as to whether you do or do not want the congestion charge. It won't invite you to give reasons for your answer. Unlike the 11 Plus did in my day, it will just ask you, do you want it or not want it? What the question will be, we don't know yet. That's going to be absolutely crucial. They may well phrase it in utter gobbledygook, but with local authorities like Trafford and like Bury diametrically opposed to the concept of a congestion charge, there's every chance that the simple question will be put rather than a complicated one. Well, what do you say? What's your view of the congestion charge as you've heard it thus far? Are you yet convinced? Do you need to be convinced? One thing we do know, and the whole idea of the congestion charge is to, well, if you put it in emotive language, it is to fine the motorist for coming into Manchester and out of Manchester. Come on, let's not funny about it. It's about Manchester. That's what it's about. All right, we're doing the orbital motorway, so that affects all the other lot. But you're not going to get charged for going in and out of Wigan. You're not going to get charged for going in and out of Rochdale, in and out of Stockport, unless you cross that terrible line. If you cross the M60 going inwards at a certain time of the day, you'll get charged. If you keep going and get all the way to Manchester, you'll get charged again. And the same on the way out. So this is a fine for people who choose to use their motor cars to come toward Manchester. And if they come all the way to Manchester, they get fined twice. The whole idea is to get people out of their cars. We as a nation have decided we want fewer people in their motor cars, and we have learned, and there's further evidence of it this morning, the only way you can get people out of their motor cars is to make it too expensive for them to stay in them. And this morning we learn that the motorways are less congested than they have been for years because of the massive rise in fuel costs. People are having to leave their motor cars at home because they cannot afford to use them to the same degree they previously did. And I noticed driving on a bank holiday weekend to and from London, we didn't have one hiccup in the traffic. Not one. Now, that's rare that you can say that, but an awful lot of people stayed at home. So making people pay through the snout to use their cars, however they're, I mean, I know the government's nothing to do with this, although it does gets a very nice penny out of it. Thank you very much. But making people pay for using their motor car actually gets them to use it less. That's what we want as a nation. I'm not bothered either way. I don't believe all this crap about the environment, frankly. And even if I believed it, I wouldn't care, because I'll be dead when all the consequences come home. And frankly, what happens to everybody when I'm gone, I don't give a toss. I really don't. If in 500 years' time, or 50 years' time, some poor bugger chokes to death on the fumes, I don't care. I'll already be dead. I'll have beat the beggar to it. So I'm not bothered. So I don't do all that environment crap. But if it gets them off the roads, and that's what we as a nation seem to want for reasons that are best known to the nation, then it works. Making them pay works. So how can you possibly be against it if you accept that people have got to get out their cars? And the problem with a congestion charge, like every other tax, is people say, yes, it is a cracking idea. It's an absolutely fantastic idea. And that beggar over there should pay for it.
Talking sense every lunchtime. Allan Beswick and you.
Well, we got more on the little kid that's been shot with an air rifle by his sister, accidentally in her case, but not in his father's. Surgeons in Birmingham are waiting to operate on an 18-month-old boy who was shot in the head with an air gun by his 5-year-old sister. The family have said that Rashid Rullah's sister accidentally fired the gun, which their father had been using for target practice. Exactly. What do you do? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you do. Do we regulate them further? Or do we just make it so that people don't do stupid things? Well, we can't, can we? We can't make regulation that says people shouldn't do stupid things, because if they knew they were stupid, they wouldn't be doing them. 0161 228 2255. Kevin says, if we stop stupid people spending money, there'd be no credit card debt and all the shops would close. There's possibly some truth in that. Via text, Colin in Bolton, in addition to the issue regarding the prevention of certain criminals travelling abroad, when a person applies for a passport, I understand they're required to fill in a section of the passport application form that involves a professional person vouching for their good character. In view of that, how are criminals and disreputable people able to acquire a legally valid passport in order to go abroad? Well, that's not what they're required to do. The only thing that the person of repute is doing is testifying that the photograph is of the person it claims to be. They're not saying he's a good person. They're saying, I've known him for 2 years, I think is the time scale. I've known him for 2 years, and that's his photo. That's all they're doing. They're only checking the identity. They're not saying, I've known him for 2 years, ever since he robbed our house. So that's that. And then he says, how come the European Union is quiet about the Zimbabwe issue? So does this mean that Mugabe has got to die in power? Well, no. First of all, the European Union isn't silent on the Mugabe issue and Zimbabwe. They've been quite vocal on it. What they haven't got is the ability to do anything about it. Hi, another child maimed, brain damaged with an air gun fired by another child, too young to know the consequences, but faced with it for the rest of their life as their little brother grows up. Let us hope their little brother does grow up. Why? Because the father was stupid enough to be using a dangerous weapon where children were playing. Even more stupid to load it and then put it in the reach of these children. Why, he dealt with a phone call? That's how it's written. He should be charged with neglect and cruelty and anything else the law can come up with. But he won't. He may as well have filled pop bottles with bleach and left pretty coloured sleeping tablets on the table. He's a moron. People around him, including those who ought to know better, will commiserate and say ridiculous things like there but for the grace of God. There will be more calls for air guns to be licensed and or banned by the Anti-Everything Brigade, and life will be made more difficult from the rest of us. You won't be able to shoot a squirrel if you want to. Keith says, I have 2 longbows, a crossbow and air pistols of the 177 and .22 calibers. I don't have anyone around when I'm practising. If someone turns up, I stop. 30 years ago in the Royal Navy, I was a fully qualified classification shooting range supervisor, an instructor of the 7.62 and the 9mm full bore, and the 22mm small bore weapons. I shot for the RN at Bisley. Weapons don't hurt anyone, says Keith in Blackpool. And he's right. Weapons don't hurt anyone. All the pain is caused by people, without a doubt. Anthony in Glossop, school kids kill school kids. How is putting them on yellow buses making them safe? Well, they're safe from getting run over on their way to school, I suppose, so that's how. David in Crumpsall says, good morning, Alan. You said father and mother were sitting by the baby's bed. Had he put the gun in the place where it belonged, sitting down would have been the last thing the father would be able to do. Oh, I see what you mean now, yes. And Jeff says, accidents don't happen, accidents are caused. Well, that's absolutely true. John in Bury, what congestion? For the last 6 weeks, there has been no congestion on the routes from Bury to Manchester. Why? Mothers aren't using their cars to run their little darlings to school. It's these same people who generally travel within the zones, and as they don't cross, some would not pay the congestion charge. Consequently, they won't stop clogging up the roads. According to GMPTA, Greater Manchester Passenger Transport Authority, less than 20% of Greater Manchester's peak time drivers will pay the charge, so it'll have no effect reducing traffic levels. It is a tax, pure and simple. That's John in Bury. What do you say? Do you think, never mind, because you'll get another place to tell us that, never mind whether you think the congestion charge is a good thing or a bad thing. Obviously, if you're going to pay it, you're going to be paid off, and you won't think it's a good thing. But how about this? Do you think the congestion charge will work? Do you think a congestion charge will work in reducing the number of vehicles on our road at peak time? That's the question that really matters. And then we'll worry about whether you're altruistic enough to vote for it or mean enough to vote against it if it affects you. Because I've not made my mind up yet. But do you think the congestion charge will reduce congestion charge will reduce the number of vehicles on our roads at peak times? You tell me. 0161 228 2255. Just gone 20 to 1. BBC Radio Manchester News headlines. Mark Edwardson.
You're more likely to commit suicide in Manchester than anywhere else in Europe. That's according to researchers this lunchtime who say a small but significant minority of Mancunians is suicide-prone. Anti-terror police from Greater Manchester and Lancashire are investigating threats against Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, have arrested a man in Blackburn. And 5 soldiers whose duties included guarding the Queen are said to have been dismissed from the army after failing a routine drugs test. Manchester's weather, heavy showers are expected. Temperatures of about 20 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, traffic on the M6 all back to normal around junction 21A at the Croft interchange through to 23 at Haydock. It was built up for a time because of a caravan that had overturned on the carriageway, but thankfully that was recovered at around about 12:15 this afternoon. So, as I say, all seems to be moving fairly well again. Don't forget, though, if you're using the trains between Stafford and Manchester Piccadilly, services are being diverted via Wilmslow on cross-country. All week, cross-country services will divert via Wilmslow and won't call at Stoke or Macclesfield. Replacement coaches will operate instead between Stafford and Stoke and between Macclesfield and Wilmslow. Don't forget, if you can update me, call in on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports.
Good afternoon. Well, the transfer window is starting to heat up, and so is the speculation. One player being strongly linked with a move to Manchester City today is West Ham striker Craig Bellamy. City have refused to confirm or deny reports that the Welshman is set to join up with his former boss Mark Hughes at Eastlands. Meanwhile, City face competition from Everton to re-sign Chelsea's Sean Wright-Phillips. The Blues Academy product has been told that he's not in for Luis Felipe Scolari's plans at Stamford Bridge. One striker that appears to be on his way out of Eastlands is Nery Castillo. The Mexican is due to have a medical at Real Betis today. Mark Hughes should have Joe back for Thursday's trip to FC Midtjylland. The Brazilian striker has returned from winning a bronze medal at the Olympics, and Hughes hopes that success could help him make a positive contribution at City.
We'll have a look at him and see what shape he's in. He's done a lot of travelling, obviously, and I think we can tap into the high that he's probably on, because he's finished the tournament on a great note with winning a medal and scoring a couple of goals, so we'll tap into that and use that.
Well, some other transfer news this afternoon, and Everton have completed the free transfer of Danish defender Lars Jakobsen. Jakobsen was released by Nuremberg last season. Sunderland are expected to complete the £8 million signing of Anton Ferdinand from West Ham, and Arsenal's Philippe Sendros is on the verge of joining AC Milan on a season-long loan. He's having a medical in Italy. Well, Wayne Rooney is hopeful Manchester United will sign another striker before the transfer window closes. If that doesn't happen, with Cristiano Ronaldo injured, Rooney thinks he'll be under pressure to score more goals.
Probably, yeah, because obviously, the forwards we have, then, you look at Carlos, he likes to come and drop in, and that's probably his best position, and, then maybe more lads have to stay up more, and then obviously I've no problem with that. There's been a lot of talk about bringing another forward in, and, hopefully we can do that to strengthen the team and, to help us spread it out.
Well, Bolton's Andy O'Brien doesn't believe Gary Megson will play a weakened team in the League Cup this evening. The Wanderers face Northampton in the second round at the Reebok.
You want to be involved in all competitions as long as possible. You know, the League Cup's a big competition. Last year we weren't in the greatest of positions, so you know it was well publicised that maybe we didn't play our strongest team out in Lisbon. But you know, this year's a fresh start, and there's no results can be underestimated.
Well, undefeated Oldham travel to Burnley for their second-round tie in the League Cup. The Latics are top of League One after 3 straight wins, but manager John Sheridan still thinks they're underdogs this evening.
No one's expecting us to win, and we'll go there full of confidence. We've had a good start, and we're going there to try and win the game. I want to get as far as possible. I'll put a strong team out. I will make changes, but I'll put a strong team out. I'm going to try and win the game and get into the next round.
In Rugby League, St Helens prop Jason Kalis has been ruled out of Saturday's Challenge Cup final against Hull with knee ligament damage. Maury Fasafalu is still a doubt, but he is in the squad along with captain Paul Sculthorpe. Chris Flannery and Bryn Hargreaves are expected to make their Wembley debuts. In cricket, Lancashire have yet to pick up a win in the Pro 40 this season, and they now have only 3 games left to avoid relegation. Tom Smith is confident that they have what it takes to stay in the top flight.
You always want to go out there and win games, and even if we're in Division 2 next year, which I don't think we will be, we'll just go out there and play cricket and win the games and just get in that win habit.
Do you think you're going to have to win all 3 to stay up now?
2 out of 3, I think, and then we should have a good chance of staying up.
Well, meanwhile, England's second one-day international with South Africa at Trent Bridge, that gets underway at 2:30 this afternoon. In golf, Ian Poulter needs a captain's pick from Nick Faldo if he's playing in Europe's Ryder Cup team. He's out of the automatic qualification places and has withdrawn from this week's final qualifying event, the Johnny Walker Classic. And finally, for now, in tennis, Andy Murray will play France's Michael Laudrup in the second round of the US Open in New York. He beat Argentina's Sergio Reutemann in straight sets, 6-3, 6-4, 6-love in his opener.
The next live action on the Northwest's biggest sports station.
Well, the Carling Cup is back this evening. Wigan take on Notts County at the JJB. Full commentary in Manchester Sports from 7.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Right, I need to lie down after all that. Noel in Eccles. Hiya, Noel.
Hello, Alan.
What have you got?
Well, it's just a question on this congestion charge. If you're in the inner ring, no, the outer ring of the congestion charge, yes. Somewhere in Salford,
yes,
and say you wanted to go to Stretford, which is in the M60 ring, and you went down the A road, would you pay the congestion charge?
It depends on... First of all, it depends on the time of day, obviously. So let us presume you're asking...
because it's only rush hour,
Yes, it's only rush hour. If you're inside the outer ring, but not inside the inner ring, are you with me?
Yeah.
Because there's like a... if you imagine it as a polo mint...
Yeah.
Yes, the bit in the middle is the inner ring. If you don't go into the inner ring, so in other words, you don't cross that boundary, and you use the A roads to go from the place in Salford to the place wherever, it doesn't matter where, providing you don't cross the boundary, you won't have to pay. Now, if you went across town, across Manchester, then obviously you would cross the boundary and have to pay. The other thing you'd have to watch for, I suspect, is if you go outside the ring road, so if the A road somehow took you outside the M60, and then you came back in to the area, then you would. So you would need to pay because you crossed that on the way in. So you would need your journey to remain within the donut, as it were, so within that outer bit, but without going into the inner bit. So if it was a polo mint, you would sounds daft. You would need to stay in the minty bit.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And you can ricochet around there as much as you like, but if you stay in the minty bit, you won't pay for going into the whole bit, and providing you don't go outside the minty bit and come back in, you won't have to pay.
Right, I understand that. The other thing I want to ask you...
Sadly, so did I. Go on.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right, but the other thing, slightly different, you were saying about travel at the weekend.
Yes.
There was a programme on the TV, on another channel to the BBC, we'll say.
Are there other channels? I'm stunned. Go on.
This particular one. And it was showing you how to save money on holidays.
Yes.
You know, different things. And one of the things he said was, check your weight on your suitcases.
Yeah.
Right, now then... They'd gone to the weights and measures in London. Are you there?
I am.
Oh, right, you went dead quiet then.
I'm listening.
And they went to the weights and measures in London, and the weights and measures had been to a local London airport and found that the actual weighing machines in the airport were 20% out. Now, what I'm saying is by 20% is that the 20% of the machines were inaccurate on the weighing.
Oh, right, so they weren't out, one machine wasn't out by 20%, but a fifth of machines weren't working properly.
Yeah, 80% of machines were accurate, 20% were inaccurate, and they were all, the 20% that were inaccurate, always heavy, if you understand me.
Yes, I do understand you.
Right.
And you're suggesting, and I suspect the programme is suggesting, that that's not at all a coincidence.
Well, possibly. Now, what made me think then was, how many of the northern airports have got the same, and when are the scales actually checked?
I can't answer that, but
you can.
As we've already, well, we'll find out, because we go to Manchester Airport every Friday.
Yeah.
Well, we're going tomorrow for some reason. Well, look, I'll tell you what we'll do. Just for this week only, we're in Manchester Airport tomorrow afternoon after 2:00 with Anthony Crank, I think it is, tomorrow. And what I shall do... Oh, it's Sam Walker tomorrow. We're getting there, don't worry. So it's not Friday, it's Wednesday. And it's not Becky, it's not Anthony, it's Sam Walker. But I shall leave a note for Sam Walker's producer to ask at the airport tomorrow how often the weight machines are checked and who by.
Yeah.
So there.
And because you were in the electrical industry, you knew that meters had to be checked and certificated.
Yeah.
Where does the certificate that says the machine's been tested and when it was tested?
I don't know.
That's another question then, please.
I'm not going to start producing Sam's programme. I know that. I don't even produce this one.
No, they won't let you near the control panel.
They won't let me near anything that moves or anyone that works, surprisingly. But never mind. Certainly we can do the airport one. We'll get Sam to ask that question of somebody at the airport tomorrow. And if not, then we'll ask it. We'll get that sorted out. As regards meters, well... There are principles in that, but the only thing really on a meter, if you're talking about a parking meter, the only thing that matters there is the timing.
No. What I'm saying is they're actually digital meters.
Yes, but there's still timing, isn't it?
I mean on the actual scales.
Oh, you're sticking with the scale. Well, it doesn't matter whether they're digital or not.
No, what I'm saying is, where's the certificate that says you're accurate?
Well, I don't know where the certificate is. All weighing machines used in retail in this country. Now, I don't know whether that would constitute retail, but my guess is it would. All weighing machines have to be accurate within certain tolerances. It is frequently the case when the trading standards departments go out and measure them that some are found to be faulty, and when they are found to be faulty, there are a number of penalties available to the trading standards department that they can hand out. One is that the machine be taken out of service, one that it be repaired or readjusted, recalibrated immediately. They can even prosecute the person whose machine it is, the company whose machine it is, for operating it inaccurately, as it were, with inaccurate readings. So there are all sorts of things that can be done. The Trading Standards Department have people that do that all the time. Now, many would argue there aren't enough of those people, but that's what they do.
Yeah.
Now, where the certificate of qualification is held, I don't actually know, because presumably it's different for every machine. I've no idea.
Yeah, then you got the question is, how many £9 a kilo overweight does it take to pay the fine for the machine being out?
I don't know. That would be a matter... It's not just a straightforward... Well, when the trading standards are deciding whether to bring a prosecution, it isn't just what is the offence and what is the degree of offence. For example, if they believe... Now, you would say they definitely are, but if the Trading Standards Department believe that these machines have been fiddled out in order to get more money, then that would be a more serious offence than if they have been incorrectly serviced, for example.
Yeah,
do you follow me? So if it's been done with the idea to steal, then
you mean to gain a pecuniary advantage?
To gain a pecuniary advantage, if you wish, which is a posh way of stealing, really. But if it's been done on purpose, maliciously, to get money, then they will take a very much harder view of it than if it's just one of those things. It was checked last Tuesday, somebody hit it with a bag as they were going through, it's adjusted the settings, we're awfully sorry. Then they'll just have it put right. So it depends not just on the degree of inaccuracy, but the reason for the inaccuracy. And if the reason is lucrative malice, then they'll take an entirely different view. But we'll get that question asked for you at the airport tomorrow. All right. I will
listen with bated breath.
Well, you bate your breath. It's 2 o'clock onwards tomorrow at the airport, live with Sam Walker, who's standing
Thank you very much.
for Becky One. Cheers, Noel. 0161 228 2255. If you've something to say, then Manchester has someone that wants to hear it. And they're probably sat there right now. Was there any witness to this shooting, says David? This is the little kid who accidentally shot her brother, I think. Yeah, was there any witness to this shooting? I find it hard to believe this version of the story. I think a child will grow up believing he or she is responsible for any damage done to their sibling. Sounds to me like the story's been made up on the spur of the moment. Where was the mother? Well, the mother may well have been out at work. The mother could have been in a variety of different places. She could have been just sat inside having a cup of tea. Mothers are entitled to do that. I don't think we can cast any blame on the mother. I've got a question for the airport. Look, we're not doing questions for the airport. That was a special treat for Noel. I've got a question for the airport. If luggage weight is a maximum of 20 kilograms per case and two people are travelling together, can we have a combined weight of 40 kilograms, one slightly under and one slightly over? Usually, no. It's limited to per case. Part of the reason for the limit on the case, part of the reason, the declared reason, is that the blokes have got to pick it up at the other end. And so they put a limit on the weight so that somebody doesn't get an ump on his back lifting it.
Mornings sound better with Eamon O'Neill and Diane Oxbury.
Eamon and Diane.
I swear, if somebody said to me, you're going camping this weekend, Diane, I would start crying now.
Slap them.
And if it was going to rain, and it was in Wales.
It's all part of the fun.
What fun? When does the fun start? I haven't got what it takes to count.
Eamon and Diane and you.
Can we talk congestion charge with you?
Yes, certainly. I haven't had the documentation yet. I'm still waiting to find out.
Do you want me to send you mine? I've read it 3 or 4 times now.
Well, I've spoken to about 4 or 5 people from various areas of Stockport, Hazel Road, Cheadle and so on. They haven't received theirs either.
The station with Eamon and Diane for breakfast.
I will help you out. It's what I'm here for.
Back tomorrow morning from 6 at BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. Walter in Romilly. Hi, Walter.
Good day, Alan.
Good day, sir.
2 things. You were right to draw attention to the distortion of the language when you opened your programme. Regarding
the bats
turbines and the bats. You're absolutely right, because there's so much distortion now. I picked up a paper last week and it says, Prime Minister to welcome gold medal heroes. Now, to my mind, these people are fantastic athletes, excellent athletes, but they're not heroes.
Not by any means, no.
They haven't lifted their head above the parapet to be shot for their country like the people in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I just wish that they would refrain from using such, inflammatory terms. That's what they are.
I agree with you. I mean,
and the other thing as well, an actor and an actress now, they're not actors or actresses, they're celebrities, they're stars, They are chorus stars. They're not chorus actresses or actors. They're chorus stars. And this distortion goes on and on and on, and nobody seems to be able to put a check on it.
Well, we don't, unfortunately, apart from me and you, Walter, we don't have a language police, but I definitely agree with you that gold medal winners are not heroes. They're just people who are very, very good at their hobby.
Indeed, and I would be the first to applaud them.
Yeah.
But certainly they are not heroes.
No.
And the second point I'd like to make is
Well, I'll tell you what, Walter, I'll have to stop you. We'll have your second point, the other side of the 1 o'clock news, because if not, we'll delay the news, and then I'm not an hero either, because I get hit with a big stick.
It's the League Cup tonight, and we've commentary on Wigan against Notts County, and up-to-the-minute news on Bolton and Oldham from 7.
So don't sit there hanging your phone, Walter. Put it down and we'll ring you back after the 1 o'clock news. We'll ring you back too, providing you ring us first on 0161 228 2255. You can email radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk.
95.1 FM, DAB Digital Radio, and the World Wide Web. This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, there is a particular challenge in Greater Manchester, the size of the city, the complexity. Professionally, I'm very much looking forward to taking that on.
Peter Fye, the new Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, says he's ready for the challenge. And Manchester is named Suicide Capital of Europe.
And Craig Bellamy could be on his way to Eastlands.
Well, this afternoon, it's a cloudy picture. There could be a little bit of drizzle around from time to time, but it feels mild with top temperatures of 20 Celsius.
And if you're heading through the Gatley area, watch out. One lane's closed off for roadworks at the moment. On the A34 Kingsway, around Gatley Road, it's the inside lane of the 2 that's closed off now until 3 o'clock today.
It's experiences of the force.
Good afternoon, I'm Mark Edwardson. The new Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, Peter Fye, says he's ready to take up the position and is looking forward to the challenge. The former Chief Constable of Cheshire will start his new job on Monday. He says he's got a tough act to follow and he's aware that his role will be scrutinised by the media. Greater Manchester's former Chief Constable, Mike Todd, was found dead on top of a mountain in North Wales in March this year. An inquest into his death is expected to be held in October, and we'd like to hear from Mr. Fye in about an hour's time. Elsewhere, a 4th man's been arrested as part of an investigation into threats made against Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. The suspect, who's 25, was detained in Blackburn. 3 other men were arrested at Manchester Airport and in Accrington earlier this month. 5 soldiers whose duties included guarding Buckingham Palace are said to have been dismissed from the army after failing a drugs test. The soldiers belonging to the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, based in North London, are believed to have tested positive for a Class A drug. Now, you're more likely to commit suicide in Manchester than anywhere else in Europe. That's according to researchers who say there's a real problem with self-harm in the city. This from Rebecca Crabtree.
More than 1 in 200 people in Manchester are suicide-prone, according to academics at Edinburgh and Stirling University. And they say the city tops the European League for both sexes. They reached their conclusion after studying hospital files, detailing more than 44,000 deaths between 1989 and 2003. And they say far from being able to talk about their problems with others, it's Manchester's women who are more likely to self-harm. They're now recommending that help is more readily available for suicide-prone people.
You'll have heard how A-level pass rates are getting higher each year. Now Cheadle and Marple Sixth Form College is introducing continental-style exams to help their best and brightest students noticed by universities. They'll offer the International Baccalaureate alongside traditional A-levels. Gillian Wilkinson from the college says it's about choosing the right system for each student.
There are students who are suitable for the IB and for whom the IB is a good choice. And at Cheadle and Marple, as in many sixth form colleges, it's all about the right students on the right courses. So it's another string to their bow.
If you live in Bury, then it's your turn today to come and have your say at Radio Manchester's Congestion Conversation. This afternoon we'll be at Prestwich Library, hearing your views on the congestion charge. This morning, commuters at Bury Interchange told us they were all for it.
I'd probably vote yes, to be honest, because I'd rather use public transport if it's possible, because it's quick and easy generally. I mean, if you go abroad into Spain or anywhere like that, it's fantastic. If we had the level of transport that was the same, then that'd be great.
I think the public transport should be improved, and I think there's far too many cars on the road.
I think it's needed up here. Having moved from London about 18 months ago, the public transport system was a lot better down there. The congestion charge made a hell of a difference in the rush hours day to day.
And Australia's considering using UK-style lottery revenue to boost its medal chances at the 2012 Olympics. after Australia finished well behind Britain in Beijing. Their Olympics head said the main objective at the London Games will be to beat the British on home soil.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Will Perry.
Well, one player being strongly linked with a move to Manchester City today is West Ham striker Craig Bellamy. City have refused to confirm or deny reports that the Welshman is set to join up with his former boss Mark Hughes at Eastlands. Meanwhile, the Blues face competition from Everton to re-sign Chelsea's Sean Wright-Phillips. City Academy product has been told that he's not in Luis Felipe Scolari's plans at Stamford Bridge. You can keep across all the Carling Cup games this evening. We have full match commentary from Wigan against Notts County, plus reports from Bolton versus Northampton and Oldham's trip to Burnley. St Helens prop forward Jason Kalas has been ruled out of Saturday's Challenge Cup final against Hull with knee ligament damage. Murray Fasafalou is still a doubt, but he is in the squad alongside captain Paul Sculthorpe. Chris Flannery and Bryn Hargreaves are expected to make their Wembley debuts. England's second one-day international against South Africa at Trent Bridge. That gets underway at 2:30 this afternoon. And Ian Poulter needs a captain's pick from Nick Faldo if he's if he's to be in the Europe's Ryder Cup team. He's withdrawn from this week's final qualifying event, the Johnny Walker Classic.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stott.
Well, this afternoon, the picture is a cloudy one. That cloud around from start to finish. Very little prospect of any bright or sunny spells, maybe just the odd one here or there. It should stay mostly dry. There's just the outside chance of seeing a little bit of light rain and drizzle here and there. But for most of us, it's a dry but cloudy afternoon with top temperatures of 20 Celsius.
Allan Beswick, halfway through your workday.
BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. If you want to join us this afternoon, 0161228 2255 and or Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk, and the text number is 07786 206 951. Walter and I were having a conversation before the 1 o'clock news about the deplorable use of language. Not bad language, I hasten to add, but poor language. Walter.
Hello, Alan, again. The second point I wanted to make was, having watched the excellent programme last night on ITV1, Pierpoint.
Oh, the film.
I think
fabulous.
There ought to be a Sidney Silverman Day, if anything, because he was the main architect of this vile and barbaric practice being stopped. But I thought the film was an excellent film. I thought Timothy Spall played an excellent part.
He did.
And the whole exercise to me was fine acting, and I think they got it about right, because I mean that period was before the war, during the war, and just after the war, and I think they got everything right, and it was a wonderful piece of television. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, it was actually a feature film rather than a television programme. They were just showing a film that had been made by others, as it were. But you're absolutely right. I saw it some time ago. I've kind of got an interest in Pierpoint. A friend of mine wrote an excellent play about capital punishment, which involved Pierpoint a little bit. But he's also written, and I'm still thinking of actually putting it together and doing it as a performance, but it's finding the time to get it right. But he's done this thing where it's a play, and effectively a one-man play. It has to be a one-man play, and what it is Albert Pierpoint coming from his last hanging, the very last one he ever did.
Was that Ruth Ellis?
No. That was the last woman he hanged. But
right.
Anyway, but the play is Albert Pierpoint coming from his last hanging to a public hall, which of course didn't happen. But he comes to a public hall, and at this public hall, he, the actor playing Pierpoint, describes his life as the public hangman.
Yeah.
With slides and all sorts of other things about the kind of people he hanged and all the rest of it. And it's an absolutely fascinating work. And I've thought about doing it. Me and Bernard Wrigley have talked about it. Peter, who wrote it, is interested in seeing somebody do it. And Bernard Wrigley was going to direct it. And we've never actually sat down and worked on it together. And
well, I'd be the first to buy a ticket.
Well, if I'm going to sell one ticket, it's more than I've sold for other things. So already I'm leaning further towards it, you know.
Yeah, right.
Make them a tenner, I could be quids in here.
Oh, okay.
And Sidney Silverman, local MP, of course, he was...
Nelson and Cone.
Nelson and Cone, indeed.
Yeah.
We call that local when we need it.
Yeah.
Sid Silverman, who I actually met once. But
Did you really?
I did, yeah. He was quite elderly by then, but a fascinating man. But, of course, what you're saying in that statement, Walter, is that you believe capital... Well, hanging, you've not broadened it out, but you believe hanging to be barbaric. Can I take from that you mean capital punishment is barbaric?
Indeed. Indeed, yes, it is. It is barbaric. And it's a sad reflection on what was, what we used to call a civilised society. There's no place in a civilised society for such happenings.
What do you say to those people who would agree with you that it's barbaric, but, and without wanting to talk about Ruth Ellis and all those people, let us look at the other hangings that Pierpoint did. He hanged those Nazis who were convicted, well, many of those Nazis who were convicted at Nuremberg. Now, if hanging is barbaric, but is it not sometimes the case that the people who suffer from hanging are indeed barbaric and have no right to live?
Well, because they have behaved in a barbaric fashion, it doesn't follow that we, who consider ourselves civilised, to behave accordingly. We are simply coming down to the level that they have sunk to. You see,
right.
There's got to be an alternative. That's what I say. I don't know what the alternative is. I'm not an academic. I'm not a clever person. But there has to be an alternative.
Pleasure to talk to you, Walter. Have a good day.
And you.
Bye-bye. Now, Walter says capital punishment is, whatever else it is, capital punishment is barbaric, and we ought not to do it. Well, we don't, and it'll be a long time before it's even considered politically in this country again, but we ought not to do it, and we should never have done it. On the subject, capital punishment in another context, it's still possible in the United States, in certain states. A depraved killer on death row has claimed that he's too fat to be executed because he would not be able to die humanely. Richard Cooey is his name. He's 5'7" and nearly 20 stone. He's filed a lawsuit stating executioners will have trouble finding his veins to give a lethal injection. And even if they do, his massive bulk, he claims, will stop the drugs from working properly, causing him to suffer an excruciating death. 0161 228 2255. Stuart in Newell Green. Hi, Stuart.
Couple of points. Just listening to... Is it Walter?
It was Walter, yes.
Sweet voice of reason. I used to correspond with a couple of guys on death row in Texas.
Yeah.
And anybody who tells me that the death penalty is a deterrent, it took 18 years for him to come to his end because of the legal wrangles. And it cost millions. And it takes actually, when the lethal injection takes 20 minutes to work. Now, I didn't ring you about that. I went to a gay pride parade, and just opposite where I was stood, there was a group of, to use your term, God-botherers. And they were haranguing the crowd, and they were preaching prejudice. One of the preachers, so-called preachers, was a black guy. And I'm thinking, well, what does he know about prejudice? And there he is preaching prejudice. But it was a good parade.
But if you are, and you sound like you are, a man who believes in the right of the human, you believe in the human's right to life, even if that human has been deemed to be evil by the rest of society, you believe in the right to sexuality, whatever sexuality you want, and I'm not for one moment suggesting that you believe in depravity, but you believe that if somebody is homosexual, whatever their gender...
I am homosexual.
Well, okay, then they are entitled to that.
I have a problem with the word gay, actually.
Well, I chose not to use it for obvious reasons, but then you come to these people, God-botherers as I call them, are they not equally entitled to say, look, the divine message we get is what you are doing is depraved?
But I've often said to you, Alan, who created God? Did God create man?
But what you're saying there, but all
man's own image.
But Stuart, all you're doing there is saying that they are wrong.
Well, they are wrong.
Well, but they think you are. So basic statements, you are wrong, because are meaningless on your side and theirs.
But
my question is, if they believe, however wrong they might be in your eyes, if they believe that they are working to save the soul of the individuals they befall, then surely they have an obligation to do that, possibly, and not whether they have an obligation or not, the right to do it. And seeing as how there you are at Gay Pride, well, so what? They're only shouting names at you.
Well, we managed to drown them out.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I'm sure. I'm sure the people in the flats nearby didn't care either way. They just wanted you both to shut up about drowning them out. But we come back to freedom. The trouble with freedom is we have to be prepared to allow those we disagree with to be free to tell us.
Alan, Voltaire.
That's irrelevant.
I will defend with my life your right to your belief.
Well, yes, I believe you are wrong, but I will defend your right to say so. But isn't that the exact opposite of what you just did? You said these people were there, these God-botherers were there, shouting their malice.
Yeah.
That is their privilege.
Yeah.
All right.
Alan, the other very important thing is, I'm part of a housing trust here in Newhall Green, and they've just fitted double glazing windows. And unfortunately, they are not lockable. They can close, they've got catches on, but they're not got keys to lock them. And as a result, it's voided all our insurance policies. There's 21 bungalows, and I've seen some insurance policy, and it states that the ground floor, because it's a bungalow, must have locks, and they haven't got them. I've actually made an appointment to see Paul Goggins.
Right, well, we're going to stop it there, because you've gone into names and things now, and we don't really do that. I know you're not making any malicious remark, but we don't do names, because when we do names, we've then got to speak to the person who has been named and give them the opportunity to address. So we will deal with that, and we will speak to that housing association and find out if they have any comment to make.
John Thompson, he knows what he means.
It's an interesting one, the old public school thing. You know, you hear that when people talk like that, and it really is that strong. It's sort of like the old BBC. Hello, this is the BBC, broadcasting from Alexandra Palace. As a northerner, when I hear someone talk like that, I go, oh my God.
John Thompson, he knows what he means.
Do you know what's a dying thing at the seaside? They're thinking of getting rid. Punching Judy.
I mean, what would you have if you made it PC?
I don't know, what would it be? There'd be a social worker puppet, wouldn't there?
Yeah.
They'd have to have a licence for the crocodile because it's an exotic species.
That's right.
John Thompson's take on the world.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Saturday from 11 on BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. How are you? Excellent, so am I. 0161 228 2255. You got something to say? Then get it said. We're all here enjoying the joy of listening to you. Yeah, right. What do you think about what both Stuart and Walter have had to say? They were following on the back of the programme on television last night, which was a film starring Timothy Spall and others about the life, particular part of the life, of Albert Pierpoint. I've seen the film previously. I may yet watch it again. I didn't record it last night, but I'm sure I can get it from the video library or whatever. But the idea that capital punishment is barbaric, I don't think there's anybody that would argue capital punishment is not barbaric. Those who think the murderers are entitled, indeed required, to be put to death would say it's barbaric, and so what? I don't think there's anybody making the point that it's not barbaric. But is it what we want in a civilised society? Are there people? Clearly there are. I don't need to ask that. Clearly there are people who have forfeited the right to live. There's no question. Ian Brady, Myra Hindley, other wicked, wicked people, the doctor, Shipman, Harold Shipman, people like that, they have undoubtedly forfeited the right to live. There's no question. But, and this is where the question comes in, not what have they lost, what have they gained, what have they created, but do we as a society ever have the right to take a life, no matter how deserving that is. That's the issue. Walter was against it just because it's barbaric. We as a society ought not to behave in that way. That's his view. Whether it works or not is irrelevant. Stewart says it doesn't work as a deterrent. It does not work as a deterrent. Capital punishment does not deter people from committing murders. Well, I don't know. We can't measure that. We can't measure it. Yes, we know that people have committed murder, knowing that if found out they would face the death penalty. But that doesn't mean it doesn't work. They didn't do it and then give themselves up. They did it and believed that they would not be found out in the main. So, does it work as a deterrent? Well, no deterrent works. Prison doesn't work because it's full. The government's talking about building another 3 prisons to house, I don't know whether it's 2,000 inmates altogether or 2,000 in each prison, but the government is this morning talking about building 3 more prisons. Well, prison doesn't work because the prisons are full, and all those people who are in prison, almost all, I'm sure some are wrongly convicted, but almost all those people in prison have been rightfully convicted of the offence, so it didn't deter them. Parking fines. People get fined for parking illicitly, including me. So that doesn't work, does it? Because I wouldn't get fined if it worked. Exactly. So punishment doesn't prevent crime. It might diminish crime, but it's hard to find out the number of people. It's hard to discover what number of people said, I think I'm murdering the wife tomorrow. Oh, blimey, I might get found out, then I get hanged. I best not murder her. She can stay alive and we'll just get a divorce. I don't know how many of those there are. I don't know how many people are thinking, I'll just park here when I go for a paper. Because let's face it, I'm driving a police car and nothing else matters. Screw the lot of them. Or, I'm not driving a police car, I'll park here, take the chance, come out, been fine. That's a buggy, still parked there. So, I don't know. Does punishment ever work as a deterrent? No idea. It's 1:20 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Alexia O'Connor.
Manchester's new top cops told BBC Radio Manchester he's up for the job and looking forward to the challenge. Peter Fahey's currently in charge at neighbouring Cheshire Police. 5 soldiers, whose duties included guarding Buckingham Palace, are said to have been dismissed from the army after failing a drugs test. And you're more likely to commit suicide in Manchester than anywhere else in Europe. That's according to researchers who say a small but significant minority of Mancunians are suicide prone. Manchester's weather, heavy showers and highs today of 20 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Well, let's take a look first into cameras on the M6 and traffic slowing down again southbound between 20 at Lymm and 19 at Knutsford. Now, thankfully, there's been no accidents or incidents along that stretch. It just seems to be due, I think, to people heading back from the bank holiday weekend period. Let's take a look now to the M60, and again, traffic moving fairly well from what I can see on camera between junction 22 Failsworth, anti-clockwise and clockwise through to 6 at Sale. And again, no major issues on the M62 heading across the Pennines between junction 18 at Sinister Island through towards junction 23 Huddersfield. Don't forget, if you can update your call in on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Mike on Merseyside. Hiya, Mike.
Hello.
What can you do for us?
It's about the congestion charge.
Okay.
Everyone's going to get a referendum that falls within the area that suppose that controls.
If you are a registered voter within one of the communities of Greater Manchester, you'll get a vote.
Yeah. But it's a con, really, or I believe it is anyway. The funding for the metro, the extension of the metro, is tied to them introducing the congestion charge. So you won't get that funding without that. That's a given, and that funding is already being spent because high-level meetings, are already taking place between utility services, United Utilities and others, and I think it's GMPTE. Do they call themselves these days? The people that run the transport.
The people that run it are indeed the executive. Yeah.
Yeah. That money's already been spent. Plans are in place. Work is already underway. Not just planning work, but general work to work on the utilities and the diversion of services, not just the roads, obviously, but the services that are going to be disturbed by it. So they wouldn't be spending that money if it wasn't already given that it's going to take place, no matter what the referendum does.
Yes, they would, and you know that better than anybody if you're anywhere near Liverpool.
Yeah.
Liverpool, not just Liverpool, I hasten to add, many cities, but Liverpool spent a small fortune, this isn't a criticism, but spent a small fortune putting together a project. It probably cost a few $100,000, if not $1 million, putting together a project, applying to the government for the funding to build their own Metrolink, if you will, their own light transport system.
I believe so, yeah.
And they failed in that bid. But that money's still been spent, so that's par for the course.
This has gone further down the line than that was I believe, a feasibility study and a basically a package put to the government to say we want this and give us the funding.
Yes, it was.
This has gone further than
it has indeed. Manchester. Well, the difficulty here is separating in Manchester, because in that same process where Liverpool went along and bid for money for to have a light transport system, a light rail transport system, other cities were doing the same. The history is that Manchester, who obviously already had one, applied for money to extend Metrolink. They were virtually guaranteed it. In fact, I think they were guaranteed it. Then there was a change of faces at the top of the Labour Party. I don't mean Gordon Brown taking over, it was before that. And it was put on hold, and then it was bundled into all the other applications, including the one in Liverpool. And it was rejected, and Manchester was required to bid again. Manchester did bid again, and was then given a diluted version of what they'd already been promised earlier. So some of the developments in Metrolink will go ahead with or without the congestion charge because it's part of a separate funding. However, and this is where a duplicity argument might apply, I think the £1.5 billion that will be spent before the congestion charge comes in, I think that possibly includes the money already promised for Metrolink. I don't know for sure, but I think it probably does. So that's the history of it. And yes, you're right, money gets spent in planning for things that might not happen. That's what we have.
That work is taking place now.
Well, yes, it is.
On the basis that this funding is given and that the congestion charge will come what may.
Well, people are entitled, and indeed it's probably essential for people to plan actual things on the ground, as it were. Because if they don't, I mean, one of the things that happened again, I'm just typifying what you're saying, agreeing with you and finding surprise at your wonderment, as it were. But one of the things that happened, this is just one incident, nothing else. When they were talking about making the M60 orbital motorway, making it go all the way around Manchester, they applied to the government for the right to do that and the money to do that, and the government sort of said maybe, a strong maybe, a very definite maybe. So the authority went out and compulsory purchased loads of people's houses to make way for the motorway, even though they still weren't told that the motorway would go ahead. Then the motorway plan was shelved, and all those people had had their houses compulsorily purchased from them and had to move house for what appeared to be no reason. Compulsory purchasing people's houses costs money, not just the cost of buying the house, but all the groundwork involved and the legal work involved and everything else. So all that work went on, all that money was spent, and the M60 orbital was shelved. Then the thing was taken back off the shelf, the M60 went ahead, and I suppose you have to say it all came right in the end, but it could have carried on being shelved and those people would have lost their homes effectively for nothing. It has to be that way. It sucks if it's you, but it has to be that way. That's how it's always done, whether it's Manchester, Merseyside, London, or what have you.
I understand that. I just think it's wrong to have a referendum. If they're going to push this through, whatever happens, I just believe it's a waste of the public's time to have a referendum.
In normal circumstances, I would agree with you. If every local authority in Greater Manchester agreed and was for the congestion charge, Mike, you would, without hesitation, I would say, Mike, you are right. But that's not the case here. Not every authority is for it, and the referendum, because of the way I'll call it a treaty, because of the way the treaty has been decided and framed, it's perfectly possible that the referendum will vote no. And it's perfectly possible that it will die on the vine, because three local authorities, if 4 local authorities vote against it, it will not happen.
Yeah.
So there is value in it. Whether that's the outcome, I don't know. There is value in it. There will be a difference as a result of those local authorities.
We'll see. Doesn't affect me. It very rarely goes to Manchester.
Indeed, and you don't sound that convinced either, Mike.
I don't. To be honest, I believe it will get forced through whatever happens.
We shall see. We shall see.
I just believe the people that legislate these days don't listen to the general public. They listen to what they believe is right for themselves, and the Green lobby and whatever other lobby seems to be screaming the loudest at that moment in time.
All right, mate. Good on you, Mike.
Okay, cheers.
Mike, very cynical of politicians, both local and national, and you'll come to no harm if you don't trust politicians. Bill in Macclesfield. Hiya, Bill.
Hello there.
Hello, mate.
Saw the programme last night on the Pierpoint.
Yes.
And I heard one or two of the comments afterwards, which I think I would have expected after watching a programme like that, which was very, very heart-rendering. The only comment I would make, having lived through the changeovers, you might say, in punishments, but I would have to say, and I don't know any figures because they never actually produced. I don't think they kept under the collar. But certainly the number of homicides seems to have gone up drastically since the days of capital punishment. I think very few people would dispute that. Therefore, the deduction must be that this experimentation of the last 50 years, to me, hasn't worked. And that's the only deduction I can gather from it. Facts and figures in that regard speak for themselves.
Okay. I would only challenge a couple of the words you used. This experiment of 50 years.
I've never been very precise with words like you. I'll leave that to your department.
All right. Well, this idea that 50 years without capital punishment is some kind of experiment in crime and punishment, humanity, and all the rest of it. No.
That was the wrong word. That's a change in the law.
It is a change in the law, but I don't think... I think the thing that motivated those who fought against capital punishment in this country, and eventually their will prevailed, I think the thing that motivated them was not the statistics for murder and the rest of it, just because they, as a subject of Her Majesty, did not want blood on their hands. They did not want to be part of a nation that put its own citizens to death. That whoever those citizens might be, and as I said earlier, many, many, many of them forfeited, Brady forfeited the right to live, as did Myra Hindley, as did Shipman, as did many, many others. They forfeit the right to live. But the argument to not put them to death wasn't that those people shouldn't die, but that the society that those who are against capital punishment are part of don't want to be the killers.
Unfortunately, the numbers in those times were relatively small. And again, in those times, like today, most of the murders were sociological murders, for the want of a better word. And it just ain't worked. I mean, I think nowadays people are just given up, to be honest, and they've just lost the plot. And we've seen a decline in the actual judiciary system, which nobody... that's the wrong word. Very, very many people do not have a belief in the final decisions. So the whole thing is to me, is a right cock-up and a right mess, and I've got no faith in any of it, to be honest with you. I think the country is in a right state when you get down to the nuts and bolts. I mean, the whole thing is... it's a lot better than the Balkans, but it certainly ain't very good.
Well, I would say I disagree with the last statement. The country isn't very good. I
didn't say that. I said it ain't very good, the system of law, and the judiciary system. I've got no faith in it at all.
Right. Well, I
played a part in it, and so I'm not totally naive towards it.
The whole process of the judiciary and crime and punishment and all the rest of it, the whole process is impossible in the end to quantify. Impossible.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you only get a choice, and once you've gone down an avenue, you're in that avenue. And frankly, because there are so many other things going on at the same time, you can't know. I think you're right when you say that no one would make the case that there are not more homicides now than there were many years ago. But one of the major contributors to the number of homicides that exist at the moment, believe it or not, it is argued, is the invention of, for example, the container. That's changed things, the container. When things came in strapped to the back of a lorry, they were harder to smuggle than if they come in a sealed steel box. They can't open every box, everybody knows that. So drugs and weapons are easier to smuggle. So the introduction of the container has as much a contribution in some people's eyes to the murder rate as does the removal of capital punishment.
Can I just butt in there?
Please do.
If we can come up with as much reasons and excuses and whatever we want to put the word on it is, the numbers just speak for themselves. Yes, and I would say that if it goes up tenfold, another tenfold, which, you know, it could easily do with the way the society is today, as it spreads out now from the inner cities into the suburbs, the violence, and again the other day I read of somebody in Hastings was battered and died to death in Hastings. If it goes up tenfold, I'm afraid society will have to do something about it. It may have to reintroduce it. Well, for the sake of all of us, for the sake of society.
It might have to reintroduce it. The great difficulty is that for the majority of those murders, it wouldn't change anything, because the kind of people we're talking about here, there's two kinds of murder that crime and punishment cannot control. I'm ignoring terrorism and things like that, which also cannot be controlled by crime and punishment. So here we go. Two kinds of murder. One, the murder in anger, the outrage, you have been beaten by your husband for donkey's years, you've had enough of it, and you put a meat knife in his back. That kind of murder will not diminish as a result of the reintroduction of capital punishment. The other one is the kind of murder we see on the streets of our cities now, where one young man blasts another young man to death, or stabs him to death. The introduction of capital punishment won't diminish those, because each of those people, it would seem, are involved in a lifestyle where death is an everyday possibility.
Well, unfortunately, this is a part of the process of taking away this penalty. It's now become just another crime. Well, unfortunately, that has been in my view, part of the result of taking away capital punishment, no matter how terrible it is. If murder now is just another crime, you do so much time for it and punishment, and then you're out again.
I wasn't making that case. In order to stop the young lad taking his knife, taking his gun, and killing a member of another gang, in order to stop him doing that, you have to make him think that the consequence of this will be massive. The consequence of this will be my death. But that lad, every time he goes out, because the people in the other gang are quite prepared to kill him, every time he goes out, faces death. So actually, telling him that we might catch you, we might try you, we might put you in prison for 6 months and then we'll kill you, is nothing, because he thinks, I've only got to go over the doorstep and somebody's trying to kill me.
Yeah,
so it's not a worry.
No,
do you remember?
I would agree with that, Alan, but my point is that, punishment, crime and punishment is not a thing on its own. like I said talk to you many, many times, the whole thing starts basically from the time that a person is born, the way they're brought up, the way they're disciplined and brought up. And
we agree.
With them, it's no good on its own. It won't stop it on its own. It would have to start in the schools, where you would get the teachers who can actually do discipline nowadays. I don't know, because none of them know how to do it. So the whole thing is a right mess, Alan, to be honest with you.
We agree. We agree on the cause, the overall cause. We don't agree on the outcome. And I'll tell you the difference. You just used it there. You think it's about discipline. And you're absolutely correct, by the way. It is about discipline. But your version of the word discipline and mine differ. You see, I think, and this'll sound daft, I think one of the major contributors to the violence in our society today is the motor car. And I don't mean people using the motor car as a weapon. I mean, we've become accustomed to sitting in our own environment that we care less for the remainder of society.
Well, I would agree with that.
And what we've got to do, if we get people out of motor cars, and you're not getting me out of mine, and make them stand at bus stops with other people.
Well, I agree with you, but I'll be the last one to get with a man if you don't mind, after you.
This is the problem, but that's what's happened. We have turned society from a collection of individuals living, working and breathing together. Yeah. We've turned it from that to a collection of individuals living isolated lives, completely alone, with no reference beyond their front door or their car door. And that's the problem. It's easy to kill a stranger when you know they're a stranger.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And as you say, the whole thing is a method. It all needs. It's going to take a lot more than these politicians to sort it out, I'm afraid. But it does want sorting out. Otherwise, I'm afraid. I mean, like you, I won't be here to see it. But it's going to be one everybody man to himself.
Well, we've got a new chief constable, Bill. Maybe the new chief constable will have something to say on the matter, and who knows? Who knows? He might even have something he can do about it. It would be interesting. What would you say? Peter Fahey, I think he takes over today. He's the new Chief Constable of Greater Manchester. Up until now, he's been the Chief Constable of Cheshire. Well, what do you think he should do? What if you were moving in to be the new Chief Constable of Greater Manchester? What would be the first thing you'd do? Just gone 20 to 2 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Alexia O'Connor.
Greater Manchester's new Chief Constable says he's looking forward to the challenge of running the force. Peter Fahey's currently in charge of Cheshire Police. The United Nations says it's found convincing evidence that 90 Afghan civilians, mostly women and children, were killed in airstrikes by the American-led coalition last week. And a robber's stolen cash from the Spa shop in Flixton after threatening staff with a knife and a gun on Saturday night. Manchester's weather, heavy showers and highs today of 20 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Let's take a look firstly to the M60, the Barton Bridge, and one lane still closed off because of an accident anti-clockwise between 11 Barton and 10 at the Trafford Centre, with congestion all the way back to 15 at the Swinton interchange. The inside lane of the 3 is closed on the incline to Barton Bridge, so please do take it carefully. If you're using the M6 at the moment as well, I'm noticing delays on camera southbound between 20 at Lymm and 19 at Knutsford. And don't forget, if you're using Virgin train services between Manchester Piccadilly and London Euston, there's a revised service in operation whilst engineering works continue on the tracks. Hopefully it should be finished by tomorrow. Don't forget, if you can update me though, call in on the usual number 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Will Perry.
Good afternoon. Well, there's under a week to go until the transfer window closes. One player being strongly linked with the move to Manchester City today is West Ham striker Craig Bellamy. City have refused to confirm or deny reports that the Welshman is set to join up with his former boss Mark Hughes at Eastlands. Meanwhile, City face competition from Everton to re-sign Chelsea's Sean Wright-Phillips. The Blues Academy product has been told he's not in Luis Felipe Scolari's plans at Stamford Bridge. One striker that appears to be on his way out of Eastlands is Nery Castillo. The Mexican is due to have a medical at Real Betis later today. Well, Mark Hughes should have Joe back in contention for Thursday's UEFA Cup trip to FC Midtjylland. The Brazilian striker's returned from winning a bronze medal at the Olympics, and Hughes hopes that success could help him make a positive contribution for City.
We'll have a look at him and see what shape he's in. He's done a lot of travelling, obviously, and I think we can tap into the high that he's probably on, because he's finished the tournaments on on a great note with winning a medal and scoring a couple of goals. So we'll tap into that and use that.
Well, some other transfer news this afternoon, and Everton have completed the free transfer of Danish defender Lars Jakobsen. Jakobsen was released by Nuremberg last season. Sunderland are expected to complete an £8 million signing of Anton Ferdinand from West Ham, and Arsenal's Philippe Senderos is on the verge of joining AC Milan on a season-long loan. He's having a medical in Italy. Wayne Rooney's hopeful Manchester United will sign another striker before the transfer window closes. If that doesn't happen, and with Cristiano Ronaldo injured, Rooney thinks he'll be under pressure to score more goals.
Probably, yeah, because obviously, you know, the forwards we have, then, you know, look at Carlos, he likes to come and drop in, and that's probably his best position, and, you know, then maybe more lads have to stay up more, and then obviously I've no problem with that. There's been a lot of talk about bringing another forward in, and, you know, hopefully we can do that to strengthen the team and, you know, to help us spread it out.
Well, it's round 2 of the Carling Cup this evening. Wigan host Notts County at the JJB. Latics boss Steve Bruce won't be taking the League 2 side lightly.
We'll take on Notts County and show them the utmost respect. But obviously it's a chance for me to play the people who need a game and get up to match fitness, and there'll be 6 or 7 of them in the game, that's for sure. We're a Premier League outfit and they're playing in a cup tie. We have to go and approach it properly and do it right. And we will do, that's for sure.
Well, Bolton's Andy O'Brien doesn't believe Gary Megson will play a weakened team in their League Cup tie this evening. The Wanderers face Northampton in the second round at the Reebok.
You want to be involved in all competitions as long as possible. You know, the League Cup's a big competition. Last year we were in the greatest of positions, so, you know, it was well publicised that maybe we didn't play our strongest team out in Lisbon, but, you know, this year's a fresh start, and there's no results can be underestimated.
Undefeated Oldham travel to Burnley for their second round tie. The Latics are top of League One after 3 straight wins, but manager John Sheridan still thinks they're the underdogs this evening.
No one's expecting us to win, and we'll go there full of confidence. We've had a good start, and we're going there to try and win the game. I want to get as far as possible. I'll put a strong team out. I will make changes, but I'll put a strong team out. I'm going to try and win the game and get into the next round.
In Rugby League, St Helens prop Jason Kalas has been ruled out of Saturday's Challenge Cup final against Hull with knee ligament damage. Maury Fasavalu is still a doubt, but he is in the squad alongside captain Paul Sculthorpe. Chris Flannery and Bryn Hargreaves are expected to make their Wembley debuts. Well, England take on South Africa for the second one-day international at Trent Bridge this afternoon. Paul Collingwood returns to the side after suspension. It's been 2 wins out of 2 for new captain Kevin Peterson so far in test and one-day matches, and that's the start that former skipper Michael Vaughan is pleased about as he starts his journey back to the England team.
I'm absolutely ecstatic that the team have done so well. You know, at the Oval and the start at Headingley last week, that's exactly the impact, if you like, I wanted the team to have, and I'm delighted with the start they've made, but now it's about me going out there and trying and get back in the team. That's what I want. I want to be back in the England team. I believe that I belong at the international level, and that's hopefully where I'll end up over the next year or so.
In golf, Ian Poulter needs a captain's pick from Nick Faldo if he's to play in Europe's Ryder Cup team. He's out of the automatic qualification places and is withdrawn from this week's final qualifying event, the Johnny Walker Classic. And finally, for now in tennis, Andy Murray will play France's Mikel Lodre in the second round of the US Open in New York. He beat Argentina's Sergio Reutemann in straight sets in his opener.
The next live action on the Northwest's biggest sports station.
Well, it's the second round of the Carling Cup this evening. Wigan take on Notts County at the JJB. Full commentary in Manchester Sports from 7.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Yeah, very good day to you. Ace says, Alan, we should reintroduce hanging and allow you a front seat to watch the first one. I'm sick to death of watching killers and rapists thrive in our liberal society. It sounds like you're talking about reintroducing it for the crime of rape as well. Be my guest. And if there was a hanging, if it was reintroduced, or any other form of capital punishment, and I was given the opportunity to witness it, I would. I very much doubt it would convince me that it was a good idea to put people to death, but I most certainly would attend. Barry in Middleton. Hiya, Barry.
Hi, Alan.
What have you got?
A couple of points. Albert Pierpoint, I watched it last night. I thought it was excellent. But Albert himself says in a very short, brief foreword to his autobiography that of all the hundreds of people he hanged, in his opinion, it didn't stop one future murder. in his humble opinion.
That is...
And he looked into their eyes before they died, you know.
That is true. That he then retracted that later.
Did he?
Yes, I actually, along with many others, interviewed him post the book, and it was some years after the book. Not many years.
Yeah.
Because he died a reasonable time afterwards anyway. But he actually, as he got older, or as he got further away from the book, he actually retracted it. He said, well, the way society is going, something has got to be done, which is much the argument that Bill put earlier. So yes, he did say in the intro that as far as he was concerned, it hadn't stopped them. He didn't say he was against it. That was as far as he went. He said as far as he was concerned, it hadn't stopped them. But he didn't...
Unfortunately, Alan, I'm not a fence sitter, but on this issue, I'm afraid I am. I disagree with you, because I think you got a hold of the wrong end of the stick when you said prisons don't work and this doesn't work. The only punishment that does work 100% is capital punishment, because the offender will never ever offend again.
No, but that's making the judgment on what you...
I'm not saying I agree with it.
That's making the judgment on what you say in it is working. The working I was referring to was the deterrent work. We want something that will stop people committing crimes.
I don't think we'll ever find that.
Well, I don't either, but that's not to say we mustn't strive for it. And the point I was making was that if prisons work, they'd be empty.
Yeah, they would. You're quite
right. They don't work. That's it. There was some sarcasm in my tone, but if anyone is to argue that prison works, then why are we going to build another 3? Because if they worked, we wouldn't need another 3. We, in fact, would just need 1 as an example. That's where you're going if you're naughty, so I won't be naughty then.
Now, the third point, guys, I don't want to take up all your time.
You can have it.
Is, I've forgotten what I was going to say, Alan, because you went on at great length.
How unlike me.
How unlike you.
Well, you have a concentrate. Go on.
I've bloody well forgotten what
It's all right. Have a think about it. Keep hold of your phone. Have a think about it. You've got 34 seconds right of this.
This Saturday night on BBC One, we're celebrating spectacular achievements and extraordinary heroes.
The best sports project is...
Stars compete for their charities and present the coveted National Lottery Awards to the people and projects who've made the biggest impact in their communities.
To do a play in such a professional theatre, it's the peak of anything I've ever done.
So join Ben Shepherd and me, Jenny Falconer, for the National Lottery Big 7 with all the draws Saturday night from 8 on BBC One.
Right, Barry,
I've composed myself, Alan.
Oh, excellent.
Many years ago, when I was a young and mellow fellow, I always said, and a lot your other true listeners now will be nodding their head agreeing with me, I always said I had 5 beautiful kids, me, and I always said if anybody killed or hurt one of my kids, I'd kill them myself. I always said that, and I did mean it, but there are degrees of guilt. There are degrees of guilt. I can name names. There was a guy called John Gotti, the Teflon Don. Do you remember him in America?
Yes.
His son, his idol, was coming home from school, and the guy coming home from work hadn't had a drink. His car's in perfect working order. He's going within the speed limit. And John Gotti, a little lad, on his bike, drove out from between 2 parked cars, and this lad hit him and killed him. There was no case or anything to answer. It was a complete and utter accident. But the police told this guy, if you've any sense, you'll leave town and go a long, long way away.
Absolutely.
And he ignored the advice, and he's never been seen since.
No, indeed.
Now, that had it been my son, I would have been so distressed and what have you. But I'd like to think I wouldn't have, I could have sympathised with the guy who was driving the car. Do you know what I'm saying? There are degrees of guilt. It was murder. Well, it wasn't murder.
Well, no, it wasn't murder. Not by
it all
any
depends
means.
how you look at it.
The trouble is, it's not... Well, first of all, murder requires forethought.
Yeah.
The incident you describe is one where a child is killed in a road traffic accident.
Yep.
That's it. They happen. But some people react to that, some parents react to that, and their pain turns into anger. And there are many arguments that say that that is not a reasonable response, but an understandable one.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the circumstances of the event. Some people are able to absorb the pain and accept that, well, frankly, crap happens in life.
Yep.
Some people are able to accept that and not shove off their own sense of pain and, in some cases, guilt. Should I let my child out on his bike and all the rest of it? And live with the horror, because it is a horror for the rest of your life. It's a horror when your child dies in those circumstances. I can tell you from somewhat close and bitter experience. It is. Nobody gets over it. Nobody.
No,
you are a different human being henceforth. However...
it must be. It's never affected me, thank goodness,
But the idea that the parent of that child was in some way reasonable in presuming it was a murder and taking revenge, if indeed that is what happened.
He was hitting out blindly, that was all in anger.
Well,
the red mist.
Quite possibly, if that's what happened, quite possibly. But how frightening is that?
It's very frightening.
You know, it's very, very hard.
To get back to where we started, I'm not a fence sitter, Alan, but on capital punishment, I'm afraid my backside's firmly on the fence. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. There's some people, in my opinion, who don't deserve to walk this earth. They're so evil.
But
I can't sit in judgment, you know.
Well, the problem there is that doesn't take us anywhere.
No.
And there's no reason why you have to. It's very easy to agree, very, very easy to agree, that there are people who are not fit to walk this earth. The problem then is deciding whether we as a society have any benefit to us in taking that person's life.
We have, because we've put them out of harm's way, out of everybody else's harm's way.
But we have had to do something horrible, kill somebody, in order to achieve it.
It's the lesser of two evils.
Well, we can use those kind of phrases, do two wrongs make a right.
In some cases they do, yeah. But then we're going down a different track, aren't we?
Absolutely. Good on you, Barry.
Thanks, Alan.
Have a good day. 0161228 2255. Ian in Wigan. Hi, Ian.
Hello, Alan.
What have you got?
Well, just to comment on what the previous chap was saying earlier about Albert Pierpoint. And indeed your comments, in which Mr. Pierpoint seemed to express that the deterrent factor wasn't there at the beginning, and later on he sort of changed his mind. I don't think Albert Pierpoint was in any sort of position to comment on deterrent in terms of murder and capital punishment, because all the people that he came into contact with had actually committed the crime anyway. So he wouldn't have actually come across anybody that had been deterred from committing the crime.
What he did come across was some people who hadn't actually committed murder, but he put them to death anyway.
He did, indeed.
Because that was his job. I'm not criticising him by any means, but that was his job. But yes, he said in the intro to his book, as was quoted earlier, he said that the people I executed were not deterred from their crime. And most people took that to imply that he meant capital punishment doesn't work as the deterrent for the first offence. Certainly stops the second one, but the deterrent for the first. But he did move away from that later, as I say, and effectively, I mean, he wasn't very precise in either direction, but effectively later seemed to imply, again, just imply, that capital punishment had something to offer in that. It's that old, well, we've got to do something.
Yeah, I think a lot of people hide behind this deterrent theory, and I don't think it's a deterrent at all. I don't think it never was and never will be a deterrent for people that are hell bent on killing somebody, or indeed have just taken that flip decision to go and kill somebody on the spur of the moment. I think the reason why most people are for capital punishment is purely for revenge. I think it's just absolutely 100% revenge. I don't think there's any other factor that comes into it at all.
Well, revenge, I suppose, saying that because they deserve it is a kind of revenge. Society's revenge. They deserve it, therefore they must get it. But I think it cheapens many of the people who think it is an acceptable form of punishment with all its inherent risks, and they think that it is a contribution to society.
Well, what purpose does it serve? It takes that person out of society, I understand that, but it doesn't make anything right. It doesn't...
Well, nothing makes anything right, and if we work on the basis of it's got to make something right, then the whole of the punishment system has gone, because it never makes anything right. Even if you go back and give the little old lady her money back, you haven't made it right. You still had the awful experience. So no punishment makes it right. What we're wondering is, does it make it better? I don't know the answer to that. Ian, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I must go, for I cannot keep Sam waiting. She'll get cross, and that's scary. See you tomorrow. Ta-ra now.
The people of Oldham are